Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast, heard each week on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can actually watch us on those. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. And if you can't find us there, you can also find us at the website or my website, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. In addition, we also talk a lot about theater. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my guest today. And she is Grace Hayes. And Grace, you can wave to all your fans and friends who might be watching this. Okay.
Hi.
That's Grace. And Grace is a junior acting major at Western Carolina University and wanted to direct a show to provide an additional performance opportunity to her peers, for her peers. Originally from Greenville, South Carolina, she grew up in a theater-rich area and has been working in the arts since she was very young. So the first question I'll ask you, Grace, is in terms of, I guess you started acting as a young child at some point in time?
Yes.
What was the first play you were ever in? Do you remember?
The first play I ever did was actually a musical. It was at the South Carolina Children's Theater in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was Cinderella, and I played a mouse, and it was also my first ever audition. And I sang
How
a song from Sesame Street.
how old were you?
I was 7.
Okay, now I have an idea for you, if not for Hart to do, but for Western Carolina to do. But do you have a record of that first performance? Do they have a videotape of it somewhere?
I don't believe so. I've never seen a video. I do have pictures, but I've never seen a video.
But wouldn't that be a cool idea? What I want people to do is to recreate their very first role. Wouldn't that be fun? You're doing it
Yeah.
as a fundraiser for Western Carolina or for Hart. Everybody go up for 5 minutes. And so since you don't have a record of it, now you would be able to recreate this record. Do you still remember the part?
I would have to brush up on it, I think, but I could probably remember it.
Okay, but I'm not going to put you on the spot now to ask you to perform it. And anyway, so you started as a young child, and what, the bug just bit you then?
Well, yeah, I started when I was 7. I was modeling. I was signed to an agency. I was going back and forth from Greenville to Nashville and just trying to get my foot in the door. But after all of that kind of died down, I actually didn't book anything until I was 14. So I went 7 years of not getting into any shows or really doing much other than just classes and trying to get better.
And so what happened at 14?
At 14, I re-auditioned at the South Carolina Children's Theater again, and I was able to, I was fortunate enough to get cast in a production of The Miracle Worker, which was directed by Betsy Basson at the South Carolina Children's Theater again. And that just kind of awoke my love for theater, and I have not stopped since then.
Did you have the lead role in that play?
No, I played a blind girl. The Miracle Worker is
Okay,
about
right.
Helen Keller,
Sure.
and I played it was just really a background role. I was on stage for like one scene, but I loved it. It was so much fun.
And so that you got back into theater at age 14. Did you then, where did you go to school? High school?
I went to my first year of high school. I went to Greenville Senior High Academy, and my acting teacher at the time was Julie Florin. I still love her to this day. And then I ended up having to transfer high schools, and I went to Woodmont High School, which I was taught by Harry Culpepper and Aaron Gill, and for a little bit of time, Jonathan Long, but he transferred shortly after I got there.
And were you acting in high school then?
I acted and I did some costume design. I was able to work crew for some shows. And I did end up getting an assistant directing position when I was a senior in high school, which kind of sparked my interest in directing.
In high school, what was your favorite play you did? Do you remember?
Um, I did a production of Footloose. It was really
Okay.
fun. And it was just like one of the shows I would just love to do again because it was so much fun. It was a blast.
And the idea what you, not the idea what you've done, but what you've been doing, I think is so terrific because I think it's great. It seems like you're trying to get an experience in a lot of different aspects of theater, not just acting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Because the thing I tell people, and I'll ask if you've ever done this, have you ever been a stage manager?
I was supposed to stage manage a production of Seussical at
Okay.
the Malden Cultural Center, and it got canceled because of COVID.
Because they say that's a great thing for people to do, to really see all sides of everything, to have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
stage manager. So then you eventually graduated high school and you went to college, and you told me off the air you transferred, right? This is your second school you've been to.
Yeah, so actually when I was a senior in high school, I auditioned for a lot of conservatory style schools. So I auditioned for Juilliard and Pace University and a couple others that are very hard to get into. And I got callbacks for almost all of them, but I didn't get in anywhere. So when I was a senior, I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. Like I thought I was good and I didn't get in anywhere. And so I did a year of online school at a community college, and then I transferred to Western after that.
When you were at the community college, or you doing online stuff, did you do any shows there?
No, that was during
Oh, COVID.
that was 2020. So that
Right.
was during COVID. So there was really nothing to do.
Yeah. So that's, must have been quite a break for you, having been active all these years and all of a sudden
Yeah,
have to be told you can't act. So you wound up in Western Carolina. What was your first year there?
this last year, the 2021-2022 school year was my first year here.
And I've just seen a couple plays there, but boy, do they do great stuff at Western Carolina.
They really
Yeah.
do. They really do.
And the thing that amazes me perhaps the most is the little theater you have to act in. That's not such a little theater,
Yeah.
it's beautiful theater. Have you been in shows at West Carolina?
Yes, I was in February of 2022. I was in a production of Romeo and Juliet, which was directed by Colin Wasmond. And then this past November, I was in a production of Clue, which was directed by Terry Martin.
Okay, fun musical. It's not a very serious drama, but
No,
was it the musical version or a
no, it
straight
was just the
version?
play version. Yeah,
Oh,
it was the straight play.
and that's one where they always change the ending or something. It varies.
Not in our production. I
Oh,
know
okay,
there's certain ones that do that, but ours was like you basically at the end did all of the versions in one
gotcha.
go. Yeah.
So that was fun. And so the thing I have to ask you about, which just blew me away when we set up this interview, is the fact that so you've done some acting, all of a sudden now you're directing, and this is you mentioned assistant directing. This first time you actually directed a play, and I
Yes.
got to ask you, first of all, how do you even get the idea to go to? You just walked in and called hard and said you want to direct, or how'd you get the gig?
Well, I so this play that we're doing, Elephant's Graveyard, it's one of my all-time favorite plays, and I had been kind of waiting for someone to do it so I could like audition and be a part of it. And just nobody does it. It's not
Right.
really a common show for people to do. And I just loved the story so much. So I was like, you know what? I'll just put it on myself. I'll just direct it. And Heart has a studio season that
Right.
they do every year, and you can submit applications for it. So I found out I was trying to find a way to direct. I thought about doing it at Western. I thought about just kind of like putting it up in someone's backyard. And then I saw that they had these applications open. So I submitted and I emailed Candace Dickinson over there at Heart, and we just kind of made it work.
And she mentioned, if anybody's listened to this, when Grace talks about a studio theater, this is not like a little studio theater. It's a beautiful theater and it's a
Yes.
full-blown production. Before your time, you may have seen where they have the dressing room off to the or a costume room off the main stage. That's where they used to
Hmm.
put the little black box theaters, 30, 40
Yes.
people. But this seats of the theater seats how many?
I'm not sure, but definitely over 100.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful theater to be into. So for the benefit of other people who did this, and it seems you've done this all your life, you just decided you want to do something and then you just went after it. Is that how you got?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important to, if you want to do something, just ask to do it. The worst they can do is say no. And most of the time they say yes.
It
So,
reminds me of like a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland film,
oh,
but like you just decided you're going to put on a show and you chose the show. And
mhm.
talk about then what that entails then too, that not only did you get to choose the play, but you now are responsible for, I guess, all of it, right? You cast it as well?
Yes.
Now, was that the first time you had ever cast anything?
Yes, it was. And it was difficult. It was really hard. But I had a lot of help from Candace. I was able to observe their main stage audition, so I could kind of see how the whole process really worked. And I, of course, know, like, from an actor's perspective, what I usually am asked to do in an audition room. So I kind of pulled from that. But it was really stressful because everyone's really good. It's just that not everyone always fits what you need them to do.
And even that process, describe what happened. So you tell me off the air, you have 8 folks you know from college, but you work with
Yes.
5 other people from the community. How many people showed up for the auditions?
Um,
Approximately.
20 to 30.
Okay, which is a nice turnout, to
It's a
choose
good
from.
turnout, yeah.
And now,
Mhm.
did you do these, Candice, in person or were they video?
Most of them were in person, but a lot of the people from Western had to send in videos because they were doing a show at the same time. So they just said that they asked if they could send in videos, and I was like, yeah, sure. But most of them were in person.
Now, let me ask you from your perspective, from a directing standpoint, is that harder to do it on video or easier? Or what's your feeling about that?
I think it's harder just because when they've sent you a monologue, you can't then ask them to read for something and you can't really ask them to change it. But if they're in person, you can have them do the monologue 3 or 4 times. But it's more difficult on a video just to see the whole picture.
Now, had you ever done yourself any video auditions?
Yes, I've done a lot, and they're not my favorite. But the nice thing is, if you mess up, you can just delete it and film another one.
Have you gotten jobs that you auditioned through a video?
Um, well, my audition for Western was a video audition,
Okay.
and I got that. So,
Now, let me ask you this question in terms of directing or acting, and even though you've just kind of 1.5 shows now, you
mhm.
assisted and you're doing this one, do you have a preference now in terms of moving forward, acting or directing?
No, I'm not sure. I keep asking myself that, and I really just have such a love for both. I don't know if directing something that I'm gonna, like, go full throttle in and, like, that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I think I definitely wanna keep my options open and do as much as I can. Um, but yeah, I think I might have more of an answer for you after the show closes.
Well, it's funny, Grace, because I ask a lot of folks that question, and oftentimes they'll tell me they prefer directing, but they're not being
Oh,
truthful because the truth is that you don't have to memorize everything this way, right?
yeah.
I mean, you sort of do because I won't say it's going to happen to you, but the worst thing I guess can happen to the director is if somebody steps out at the last minute or has to get out, and then they ask the director to come in because you sort of
Yeah.
know what's happening. But that must be tough.
Mhm.
I can imagine both acting and directing the same play, and some people have done it, I guess, but
Yeah. Yeah, I know several people who have done it. I can't imagine doing that. Definitely not now. Maybe one day if I have, like, a bunch of experience and I really know what I'm doing, but right now, definitely not.
so you're mentioning too, and I can just imagine what you said is in terms of you're auditioning all these people and some very talented folks, but to tell somebody that they didn't get a part is probably tough, especially in your case, I guess if you knew a lot of these people.
Yeah, I did. I knew a lot of people, and that just really stinks because it's like for some people, it was like, "I really want you to get this part, like, I really wanna cast you," but I just can't because I have to think about it from the whole show, and I have to see what benefits the entire production, and there's just, like, a better option or it just doesn't quite work, and so that's really tough, but it's kind of just part of it, you know? I've been told no as an actor, and it's just kind of part of the job. I mean, 95% of what you do as an actor is get rejected.
Right? So you have to get used to it. This show helped me a little bit in that I don't know very much about it other than what I've read. So again, the title of the show is what?
Elephant's Graveyard.
Okay, and if I can ask you, kind of for the Reader's Digest version, you can keep it to maybe under 2 hours. No, I'm just the summary. But for the benefit of the folks who don't know, which is most folks, what's the show about?
So the show is based off of a true story, and it is about the only known lynching of an elephant in Irwin, Tennessee, which is only about an hour and a half from Waynesville, where we're performing the show. And a little over 100 years ago, right before World War One, we there was this traveling circus called Spark Circus, and they had this elephant named Mary, and she was in a parade in Tennessee, and she ended up killing a man. And the town demanded that she be killed, and what they did was they took her to a rail yard and they hung her by a crane. And there's pictures of it. You can Google it. It's really graphic, so trigger warning for that. But it's a true story, and it's really heartbreaking. But it's a beautiful story in the terms of the show. They tell it in a very beautiful way.
Now, who in terms of doing the show, um, is an elephant in the show itself, or it's just implied?
No, you never see the elephant, and you never see the man that she kills. You actually like it. It's never shown at all in the show. It's really just only talked about, which is cool because it provides a lot of opportunity for you to take it in different directions. I've seen the show done in a proscenium stage where they, maybe had like oh, what's it called? Projections of
Right,
stuff,
right.
but we're doing it in the round. So it's really kind of all the audience gets to interpret a lot of things, which I think is really special.
So you actually, how many times have you seen it, the show?
I've only ever seen it once,
But you read
and
the
it
play
was
as
when I
well,
was in high school.
and you read the play as well.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it just sounds like a fantastic story. So people get a chance to see the show. What's interesting about it is, do we also see it? Is there a trial? Do we see a trial?
No.
Oh, it's lynching. Where it happened, it was lynching.
Yes.
Oh, so there's no trial then. So
Nope.
talk about the cast then you put together. So you put together, what are these, mostly townsfolks, or the people in the cast?
It's about half townsfolk and half the circus people. So you get to see there's a ringmaster, there's a clown, there's a ballet girl, there's the elephant trainer who actually trained the elephant, and there's the tour manager, there's a strong man, and then the townspeople are like there's a young townsperson, there's a widow, there's a African American townsperson, which is really important because that character talks about how this town also hung a lot of um, Black people in that area, and it was never talked about. They only ever talk about how they hung an elephant. And we also see an engineer. We see it's a very diverse stock of characters, if that makes sense.
It well does. And in terms of the characters, I know maybe some of the community folks you have, but if you give a shout out to some of the people in the play, if you would, if you have that handy, I'd just like to
Oh
hear
yeah, of course.
who's in the play.
So our circus folks are made up of Caitlin Brown, who plays the ringmaster. Ken Agoki is our trainer. They're both students. Dabney Dupner is our ballet girl. It's another Western student. We've got Hope Chelman, who's playing our clown. David Spivey, who is a
Okay.
community member.
Well, yeah, I'll just stop you too. If David's in the play, it's going to be great. I mean,
Oh, he's wonderful.
but it just and David, I think, and you may agree, but he has like the world's greatest voice. I think, in terms of
Oh, he does.
I just love
He
David.
does.
So you already got me. So who else is in it?
Jay Howell is playing our strongman. Our and that's all of our circus folks. Our townspeople are Ryan Colbreth. Um, we've got Vicky Mangieri, Mark Krasinski, who's playing our preacher. We've got Jenny Taylor, who it's actually her first show in a while. Imani Hargett, who is playing our Hungry Townsperson. She's a Western student, and it's her first show ever, which is really exciting.
Is she a
Um,
is she a theater major?
She is actually a film student,
Okay,
and she
great.
is a senior. She's about to graduate, and she was talking to me about how, she really wants to break out into acting, and that's kind of the route she wants to go. And I was like, well, why don't you come audition for the show I'm directing? And she's wonderful. She's great. You could not tell that it's her first ever show. And then we've got Blair Burris, who is playing our engineer, and she so graciously offered to play the guitar. So we actually have live music in the show. And it's really cool. And then we've got Matthew McCandless, who's playing our Marshall. And I think that rounds out all of the cast. I think
So it's
that's it.
interesting. So out of it, I only know the one community member, David, but it sounds like a lot of fun. And what's really interesting, what you're doing with the live music, is I don't know how you feel about this, Grace, but it's a big thing, not only in Western North Carolina, but elsewhere, to not do musicals anymore, or not do any music, or if they do it, they do it with the track, you know.
Yeah,
And I don't know about
yeah.
you, but I just love live, that she's playing the guitar. I think that's so exciting. At Western North Carolina, I guess, no, at Western North Carolina, somehow they can afford it, but they usually have live orchestras at shows, or I've seen it.
Um, For the musicals, I think
Yeah,
usually what they do is they'll do like half
right.
track, half musicals, but they have live musicians. And we just did this musical Quilters, which is directed by Claire I, and it was beautiful. And they had a full
Yeah.
live orchestra, and it
Which,
was wonderful.
because I don't know about you, but I just love it, when I see live
I do
orchestra,
too.
even if it's just one piano player, because I don't know how you feel about it, but my argument is, well, they say it's cost factor, but musicians somehow get paid, but actors oftentimes don't, at a lot of
Yeah.
places. And my comeback is, well, then they should just have actors mouth the words. You could do the same thing too. You have a track, so you would just get up there and pantomime or something. But I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you don't do that. The music she's playing, is this original music, or where'd you get that from?
It's original music. She plays a couple songs that are, it's really just underscoring of music. So I think she pulls from a couple different songs. I know she's got some hallelujahs going in there and some like kind of gospel music, but a lot of it is just chords and strumming that she plays to kind of underscore what's happening on stage and build with intensity and things like that. And it's really cool. It's amazing.
Now, I'll ask you to give a shout out to another very important person in the show, and I don't think they get enough credit, but you also have a stage manager helping you?
We have two. We have
Oh, okay.
two. So we have Danny Gamma, who is our stage manager, and Annie Watstick, who is our assistant stage manager. They are both students at Western who I've worked with, and I reached out to them and I was like, "Hey, would you want to stage manage this show that I'm doing?" And they were like, "Yeah." So they're great. They're doing a phenomenal job.
And too many folks don't realize what the stage manager does, but I'll kind of ask you to talk about what your stage manager, what's their role? What do they do?
So they both, since we have two, they kind of split a lot of the work. But they record everyone's blocking down. They're on book, so if someone calls line, they can give them their line. They do a lot of like the business type of stuff and the technical type of stuff that I really don't know how to do that well. They take line notes. They really are kind of the glue of the whole production. They really just hold it all together. And you cannot do a show without a stage manager. It's impossible.
And I think that's the advantage of having you involved in this show as well, because it seems with all your varied theatrical experience, you certainly have the range of experiences. You've done just about each of these different things individually, but this is the first
Mhm.
time you've done this, even in things that you wouldn't think about. So you have a separate costume person doing costumes on this.
Yes, Stephanie Gall is another student at Western, and she is doing the costumes. And they're really good at doing like period pieces, um, and which is a lot of what we do. So I'm very lucky to have Stephanie on the production.
What a lot of folks don't realize is the time and effort you put into this. And so you've been at this for how long, this particular show?
So I submitted the application for it in August or September, I believe. And then around November was when I got the confirmation of like, you will be doing this show. And we really started to get the ball rolling. In December and January was when I really solidified my production team. I got all of our designers together, and that's when we really kind of started the background work for it. And then the show was cast at the very end of February. So we actually have only had about 2.5 weeks of rehearsal, and we start tech week next week.
Okay, and for the benefit of folks who may want to see the show, and just the story itself seems that you're going to want to see the show. If you would, Grace, talk about when the run is.
So it runs March 31st to April 9th. It's 3 shows each weekend for 2 weekends. And then the Sunday performances are a 2 o'clock or 2:30 show, and then the evening performances are at 7:30. So you've got 2 weekends to be able to come see it. And the show only runs for a little over an hour. There's no
Oh,
intermission, so it's pretty quick.
okay, well, I'm there then, because I don't know about you, but as I get older, the shorter a show is and no intermission, that is a short show, which
It
is kind
is.
of nice. But people are in for a treat. But how do you feel too about the fact that so you've been in rehearsal? So it's not that long a rehearsal process. You started in late, I guess in February or late February. You started on this or putting together March.
Yeah, we started. So I think our first day of rehearsal was technically February 28th.
Yeah,
And then we had 2 or 3 rehearsals that week, and then we had a week off because it was Western's spring break. So a lot of people were not there. And then we started up this past or 2 Sundays ago, the 12th of March, and we've had rehearsals for 2 weeks straight, essentially.
that's still a relatively short, rehearsal time
It
uh,
is.
to put this on. And so I just encourage people to see this because they don't, they'll come to see a show and think it's so great, but not realizing you've been working a month then solid on this as well. It also must be tough too that a 2 week run is a relatively short run as well. It's just
Yeah.
when 6 shows is not a lot of shows. So I guess you almost want to, by the time it's over, you want to have another week or two, but you have to get in and out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So for the folks who want to see the show, and I encourage them to do so, because anything at heart you're going to enjoy. Do you have the website handy there in front of you for tickets?
I don't, but I can pull it up
Okay,
real
all right.
quick.
We'll have a race here. Who gets it quicker? But Heart Theater, I think, is it? Or
Yes.
that?
Oh,
Grace, you beat me to it.
I think so.
Okay, and I think I have it too. I'll let you read it. Go ahead.
So I'm pulling it up. Tickets cost, oh,
We don't have to talk about the cost, but they're reasonable.
oh,
But what's the website?
yeah. Oh, it's hearttheater.org.
Okay, and it's Heart Theater, and we spell theater the correct way. Is that correct? How do you spell it?
THEATRE.
.org. How do you spell it ordinarily?
I spell it that way.
Okay. I always get confused though. But if your name of a theater or you said a theater major, what are theater majors at Weston? What's they spell it? ER
They
or
spell it
RE?
RE.
Okay. So it's
I've
always
always been told that like ER is the place, but RE is the art.
right, except in the place is RE Heart Theater, spells it
Yeah,
RE,
so
And then the other big debate people have is, and I'll ask you personally, are you an actor or actress?
oh, I always just say actor,
Me too
just
now.
because I feel like there doesn't really need to be a distinction anymore. But I'm not ever offended if someone calls me an actress.
But yet, when you think about it, they don't ever call anybody a directress, right? I've never heard that term,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but it's a director. So after this is over, then what's next in store for you? Retirement? Is that what we do?
No. The next thing I do is I'm actually assistant directing another show at Heart called Big Fish, which
Okay.
Candace is directing. And that's a musical.
Okay, I'm anxious
And
to
so
see
that will
that.
be
Yeah.
really exciting. Yeah,
Oh,
that'll
so
be
that's
fun.
so that's really exciting. That'll also be at the main stage. Is that correct? Big
That'll be a
Fish?
main stage show. Yes.
Okay. So you're going to continue directing. Any plans in terms of more acting at Weston or anywhere else?
Yeah, so hopefully I'll get to do a little bit more acting at Western. And then I'm actually really thinking about going to grad school. I just don't know if I want to go to grad school for acting or directing yet. Um, but I should know soon because I got to start applying soon.
Already the okay, that'll be kind of interesting. And then after grad school, you plan to stay in theater?
Yes.
Okay, as actor, director, or whatever comes your way?
Yeah, just kind of whatever pops up. I guess I'll just do a little bit of anything just to kind of stay in the business.
Do you see yourself writing plays at all? Or have you ever done that?
I haven't done it yet, but it's been piquing my interest. I feel like I might start dabbling in that area as well.
So as we're talking, I have this great idea for your first play about this young woman who just walks in off the street and gets her first directing job, as a
Yeah.
junior in college. But this is so cool. So anyway, I wish you a lot of luck in this. I look forward to seeing the show. It sounds just like a great show. And
Thank
I'll
you.
ask you maybe a final question. Would you say an age range people should see this show? Is it appropriate for younger children or maybe not?
It's definitely a mature audience. Only I would say if you're below the age of, I want to say 16, but I know that these days kids are a lot more mature than they
Right.
used to be. So maybe like 13 and up. I would say definitely not for like very young kids, just because it is pretty sad and it can be pretty aggressive. But yeah, it's a mature audience.
I thank you for being my guest on this Blaine's World podcast because you certainly
Yeah,
had me
thank you for having me.
interest in the show, and it's going to be quite something to see. And I look forward to seeing you not only here, but then co-directing big or assistant directing Big Fish, a whole bunch of other things at heart. Hopefully, you stay in the area. And I want to thank you for being
Yeah.
my guest on this edition of Blaine's World. And also, I'd like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And I think we'll sign off, Grace, but stay with me for just one more second. Thanks, Grace.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.